All right, so now let's talk about the presentation slides, which are the last part of the presentation sequence assignment. Now, I'm not going to ask you to actually record a presentation because the logistics for that are just really irritating, and it's much more difficult to come up with a grading rubric for that. So instead, you will simply be graded on the slides with the addition of this narrative script that I'm talking about, this presentation script that I've talked about. So this is the culmination of the presentation sequence assignment. It follows directly on from the argument outline. And the argument outline tells you or puts forward an order of the sources that puts the sources in order which you presented in the annotated bibliography and sort of puts them into the structure of an argument to support the thesis that you've been sort of going along with for the second and third of the presentation sequence assignment. So the first one was about articulating a thesis, then you picked a thesis and you move forward with it, doing some preliminary research, and then on the basis of that you made a sort of outline for the argument, and now finally you're going to turn that outline to a set of slides. So minimally, you will have 4 slides, right? Excuse me, 5 slides. Wait. Six, okay? And I'll go through them. I do want you to have a title slide like this one. Make your title the best way to make a title is either to make it sort of catchy or to make it informative. Informative titles tend to be longer and drier. Snappy titles tend to be kind of puns or something like that. You can try and mix it up and make one that is both informative and snappy. It's an exercise in marketing, essentially. But I do want you to come up with a title, not just presentation slide assignment, right? A title which tells me what your presentation is going to be about, right? Generally speaking, when you're designing slides for a presentation, you want there to be maximum contrast between the background color of the slide and then the color of the text to facilitate maximum visibility. You also want to avoid color contrasts which might make it invisible to people with certain color blindness. For the most part, if you make your slides in PowerPoint, they have a big accessibility push in their most recent designs, and so most of the pre-made themes should be highly visible. So you don't have to worry about that. The one thing you will have to worry about is not putting too much text on a given slide, because as you put more text in, the text size is smaller and makes it more difficult to read and reduces the visibility. So this is a fairly, black and white is obviously, the maximum contrast. Everyone should be able to read that. It may be a little bit boring. Don't worry too much about boring here. We're just trying to get a very basic set of slides put together. So, 1, you must have a title slide. 2, you have an introductory slide. And the introductory slide gives the presentation plan, right? So you state what you're going to do in the presentation. That is, you put forward your thesis, your topic and your thesis should have an indication of how you will demonstrate it. So this sample presentation is about the superiority of crunchy peanut butter. And so that is very clearly outlined here. So you'll say, today's topic is the variety of peanut butter, and what we're going to talk about is how crunchy peanut butter is the best variety of peanut butter. It is the best because of its textural variety, its nutritional values, and its social connotation, right? So I just said a lot more than was on the slide. That is what the script is for. So you see, I've written the script down here in the presenter notes. You can make the presenter notes visible by going to View, and it'll say hide presenter notes for me. So default, the presenter notes usually don't show up. you go to View, you go to Show Presenter Notes, and then this little box will come up down here. You can type down in there, and when you save the file and send it to me, that stuff will come right to me and I'll be able to see it. So it makes it that you only have to submit one file and we'll get both parts of the assignment in, that is the slides and the script. So you need a script as well on pretty much every slide. Not on the title slide, but on every other slide. And this represents what you would say if you were giving a presentation on this set of slides. So it should be conversational. It should have more information than what appears on a given slide. Slides are not to put up all the relevant information that is needed, that is going to be given in the presentation. If it just sort of, if you just plastered your script on the slide, first of all, that would be ugly. It'd be difficult for people to read. Second of all, that would make you as a presenter superfluous, unneeded, and that's not what we want. The slides are there to scaffold, to support your presentation. The main event is you up in front of the audience talking. You want their attention to be on you. And in order for their attention to be on you, you have to make sure that there's not too much going on in the slides. The slides need to be such that your audience can look at them in a second or two, scan it, remember what's going on, figure out what's going on, and then go back to watching you, right? So the script would go something like this. Good morning, and thanks for coming to hear my work today. I'm going to be talking about something a bit unusual for an academic talk, peanut butter. Specifically, I'm going to argue that if you aren't eating crunchy peanut butter, then your life is in shambles. Get your shit together. Crunchy peanut butter is better for you, more interesting, and people won't think of you as a 4-year-old for eating it, right? So there's a lot of, it's very energetic because it's kind of a joke presentation, hamming it up a little bit. Presentation is it's like a performance. It's like you're doing a one-person play, basically, provided you're teaching the class by yourself. So you need to keep people's attention, which can be difficult. Especially when you're talking about dry philosophical stuff. And it's even more difficult in the sort of context that we have where I'm sitting down, I'm talking to you, you're not sort of directly engaged with me in the same space. If you're in one of my classes that's on ground, face-to-face, I walk around, I write stuff on the board. It's easier to gauge the audience's level of understanding and engagement, so I can shift on the fly if I need to. Those are all things that you need to be able to do for a good presentation, right? That's not to say that you need to be flashy. For instance, I hate TED Talks. I hate TED Talks with a burning passion because, as far as I can see, they're mostly all sizzle, no substance, or all sizzle, no steak. That's the saying, right? They're about these big ideas. They're trying to wow the crowd and sort of amaze them into submission, as it were, but they're often very short on details. They're very short on, as it were, steak, right? Ideally, steak is the most important part. Sizzle is least important. So you want to make sure that you have good content, and then from there you can work on the presentation. This is the same with a paper. If your paper is boring, that's okay, as long as it gets the point across, right? Work on getting the point across first. Better to be boring and right than exciting and wrong, as far as in an academic context. Obviously, that may be not true in life in general, but whatever, right? So, introduction slide, step 1, presentation plan. Step 2, the slides after the introduction but before the conclusion correspond to the body sections of your outline. That is, you're taking a single point and you are enlarging upon it. So we have 3 body slides here because we have 3 supporting points for our thesis: textural variety, nutritional value, and social connotation. You needed at least 2 body slides, or body sections in your outline, which means you will have at least 2 body slides. Now, you don't have to fit everything from one of your body sections in the outline into one slide, right? In fact, once the slide starts getting too long, definitely don't do that. Definitely slip it onto another slide. That's fine. There is no upper limit to the number of slides that you can use, although I would say once you get to around 15 slides, you've butted up against the end of this hypothetical 15-minute time limit. Generally, if your slides are sufficiently informative, you cover them sufficiently, it's going to take you about 1 minute per slide in a presentation. So you can get a rough estimate of how long a presentation is going to take by how many slides you have in it. So this presentation ought to take 7 minutes, but I've been, talking endlessly about various things which aren't actually on the script. But that's fine because I'm trying to tell you how to put one of these together. So now, step 2, we provide evidence and arguments, and each of these slides needs a title. So the title of this slide would be, in this sample presentation, is Variety is the Spice of Life. And again, you do not read the slide off. That's what the script is for. And so we would continue. Boring food is boring. Do you want to eat pablum? Because that's what the classic PB&J is. You might as well have it barfed into your mouth by your mom. It's a food for children and old geezers whose teeth aren't all there. People who know food and aren't cursed with various intolerances, like a complex balance of tastes, temperatures, and textures. That's what the creepy phrase mouthfeel that people are always talking about in cooking show means. It means the texture of the food. So crunchy peanut butter has more texture, right? Smooth peanut butter, particularly because it's smooth, lacks variety and texture. Whereas crunchy peanut butter has that little smoothness because it's not just a bunch of peanuts, and it also has little hunks of peanuts. So it has both smooth and crunch, not just smooth, right? It has an additional texture on top of the smoothness of the peanut butter. So textural variety means it's better. Culinary experts agree. So you'll see there's a script here. I did read it off. When you're doing a presentation, you shouldn't be reading. You shouldn't be staring at the computer reading your notes. You shouldn't be reading off of a paper or a set of script cards. You should more or less be able to look like you're doing this off the top of your head, right? So again, if you were in one of my face-to-face classes, you would see that I do not read the slides for the most part. I'm not reading off of a paper, some cards. I'm walking back and forth, and again, as far as the student knows, I'm doing it off the top of my head. And the most part, I am doing it off the top of my head. I don't have any notes for the presentations that we've been doing this whole time. I just I look at the slide, it reminds me of what I want to say, and then I say that stuff. Now, occasionally that will lead to you looking a little bit dumb, stopping, stuttering because you've forgotten what you're going to say, but there are presentation tricks to get around that. So if you want to avoid saying, what you do is you just stop. You have a significant pause, and you think about what you're going to say, and then you continue. Instead of saying, well, what you do next is just don't talk, right? I mean, these are things that take practice. But ideally, you are not reading off a script. You have some set of things that you want to say. The slides remind you of what you're going to say, so they serve as a guide not just for your audience, but also for you. So you have a script, you don't read it word for word, you try and mostly say all of it, and you're just trying to get value added, additional information, presenting the information which is on the slide in a different light, things like that. So then you'd move on to your next argument, your next supporting consideration. So here, Hearty and Healthy is the title. So there is this phrase, eat to live, don't live to eat, attributed to both Socrates and Benjamin Franklin. So it's very clear. Obviously, what you eat can significantly impact your overall health. On this score, crunchy peanut butter ekes out an advantage over its creamy rival. Its advantage in terms of fiber may not be a surprise because, well, after all, there are whole chunks of peanut butter. It's not all mashed into oblivion. But it also wins out a little bit in terms of saturated fat and folate content. So folate is a B vitamin, very important in general. I think particularly for pregnant women. And its saturated fat is a little bit better. That is to say, the crunchy peanuts, because peanuts have a lot of monounsaturated fat, the unsaturated fats are the good ones. Mono and polyunsaturated fats are good. Saturated fats are worse, generally speaking. Crunchy peanut butter has better saturated to unsaturated fat ratios, basically. So as you see on these slides, I'm not just saying this stuff, I also have my citations as if it were paper. You put the citations in the same in-text format. You will save all of the long bibliographical information for the reference slide, which is the last slide that you put together. So now you move on. So I have 3 supporting considerations here. So next we move on to the third supporting consideration, which is don't be a baby. Imagine a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You got it? What does it look like? And who's eating it? Odds are it's some little kid, maybe who has 1 or 2 teeth, looks kind of dumb, and is asked for a snack from their exhausted parent, pestering them, "Mom, Dad, we're hungry," and they make some kind of peanut butter and jelly sandwich because it's real easy. It's on white bread, it's the crusts are cut off, you have this purple paste that doesn't really look like any fruit has ever touched it, and then creamy peanut butter. Eat it, kid, get out of my way. That's a peanut butter commercial right there, right? We've all seen it, and that's probably what we think of. As adults, well, adults want to be avoided as being children. They want to avoid being perceived as having never grown up. Particularly adults who are in their, early, mid-20s, getting onto their 30s. They want to separate themselves from their parents and the life of being taken care of by their parents. And so, when you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you have associated that with children. So, do you know what I've personally never heard when eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Aw, are you having a little snack, champ? Do you know why? Because my sandwich isn't garbage. It isn't on sort of this mushy white bread which barely holds together. It doesn't have this purple and recognizable goop, and the peanut butter couldn't have been something that's squeezed from a damn tube. Don't be a baby. Eat crunchy peanut butter. So again, this is very exaggerated in terms of the performance in the script. Being engaging often means it means avoiding being stilted. Don't be too formal. You can engage in some jokes, get some laughs out of the audience, and you can even invite a little bit of audience participation, right? So when I do this sample presentation for my on-ground classes, I actually ask them to tell me what they think of when they think of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And invariably, most people give me this commercial situation that I've described, the peanut butter commercial with usually a mom making a sandwich for some annoying kids, right? That's how it goes. And so here we have some studies to back that up. Social approval of activities is highly correlated with their desirability. So that is, when you want to avoid being seen a particular way, you avoid activities which are correlated with being that way, right? Even if you don't think the activities are actually bad, you will avoid doing them so that you aren't perceived as being bad in a particular way. So there's a bunch of stuff there with supporting that. And again, this is just to give you an idea of what a good slide is structured like. So then the last slide on which you need a script is the conclusions one. Conclusions and future directions are sort of what you put on the last slide. So you restate your thesis retrospectively, that is saying, look what we've done, we've proved it, hooray for us. And then you say, you might have some further thoughts, you might think I haven't thought about this objection, you might think how does this launch us forward into further studies, and you can address that sort of stuff in this last slide. So the script goes, by now I've made a solid case in favor of crunchy peanut butter. It's better for you, it's aesthetically superior, and you can avoid the stigmatization of being childish for eating peanut butter. You might wonder then, what about people who are allergic to peanuts? Or people with dental problems for whom chunks of peanut may cause pain and damage? For the former, there's almond butter. It's more expensive, and I'm not sure I've ever seen crunchy almond butter, but at least it avoids being perceived as childish because almonds are fancy. For the dentally impaired, I suggest some small-size seed additives to gain some of the advantage crunchy peanut butter has. For instance, you could put in some chia seeds in your peanut butter, something like that. In any case, thanks again for coming out today, and I'll now address any questions or comments. So there you go. Hopefully, and you'll see that the script is always more is wordier. It has more words, or at least almost always, than the slide itself. That's the balance you want. That's the ratio you want. You want more words to be down here than up here, because again, the attention is supposed to be on the presenter. You are supposed to be the source of information, the primary source of information. Any handouts, any slides, any videos are supposed to illuminate your presentation. You are not the visual aid for the slide. The slide is the visual aid for you. That's the goal here. So after your conclusion slide, you want to give your references, and here is where you give the full bibliographical information for each of the sources that you have used in the set of slides. And so, this should already be familiar. You should already have all this information for the annotated bibliography. So, to recap, you need a title slide, an introductory slide, at least 2 body slides corresponding to your at least 2 body sections from the outline, and then a conclusion slide and a references slide. At least 6 slides. Any fewer than 6 and you will not have fully completed the assignment. Now, of those minimally 6 slides, 4 of them will have script, narrative script on them. The introduction, body 1, body 2, conclusion. The title slide and the references slide do not need any script on them, right? So you can see in the corner here, this little thing indicates that they have script on them. The script, the narrative script, should be what you would say were you actually presenting this to some group of people. And it should contain more information or a different perspective on the information than what is put on the slides. Down in the script, you can put your anecdotes, your stories, your jokes, your fuller explanation of the sources that you cite on the slide, right? That's how this should go. Hopefully this clears everything up. Any questions that people had about how this assignment is going to go, remember you will now have until the end of next week to do this, so plenty of time to ask questions, plenty of time to sort of try out the presentation on yourself, for your friends, talk it out, see whether the script feels sort of natural, conversational, whether it's doing what you need it to. You can watch through this to get an idea of how things go. I've tried to give you a good example of all the stuff you need. But if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask.